Hi everyone. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you guys to send me your resumes so that I can review it. A ton of you guys sent through your resumes and I've been going through each one of them and picking and choosing which ones I felt would be interesting to show in a video. I'm going to try to do as many as I can and make this into a series where I will review 4 resumes every single video. Let's just get straight into it with the first resume. So this person is someone who is starting university in August 2021. So first things first, I wouldn't include these logos right here. I would make it a bigger font size for your name because that's the first thing that someone who is viewing your resume sees, and you want your name to be big so that they remember it. As for the information you generally include below your name, you would include your phone number, your email address, and sometimes your home address. Now for objectives. Objectives is something that is more tricky. I generally don't like to include an objective on my resume. I find them all incredibly vague, and basically anyone can have the same objective. You want your resume to speak for itself. Now, given that this person has not started university yet, they obviously will not have as much experience to include on a resume. So I think it is fine to include a summary here, but I would definitely combine your summary and objectives into one. I wouldn't take up so much real estate on a resume to have both. The fact that you have here about reading 30 English and Chinese books in less than 2 years is impressive, but I don't think that's something that's very relevant for a job at all, so I would honestly just exclude it. So your education section looks fine. The only thing I would do here is I would bullet these 2 points that you have on being top 20% in the school cohort and being awarded a certain award just to match with the rest of your resume. For your work experience, I probably wouldn't number them like this. Just get rid of the numbers and then make everything indented the same way so that it is one clear line down. This makes it much easier for someone to read. In addition to that, rather than just including the role that you had, for such as financial blogger, volunteer private tutor, and national services supply assistant, you need to include the place where you actually did that work. Instead of saying financial blogger, write WordPress because that's where your blog is, and right below that, self-employed financial blogger as your role. I wouldn't give a direct link to your blog. I would just include your other bullets below that and talk about things like your viewership base. Try to include more numbers into your bullets to make them more legitimate and give them more authenticity to them. I like how each of your bullets start with an action verb like analyze, provide, track, plan. I think that's really good. One very small thing I would change is that just the formatting of your months. If you're going to keep it to 3 letters, SEP 2020 to present, which is generally how people format for resumes, you need to do the same for this January one. So make it JAN 2019 to NOV 2020. Very small thing, but these small things all add up on your resume. So what I noticed is that this person actually has 1.5 pages, which is not at all necessary. First of all, if you are still a student and you don't have much work experience, or if you're just starting out in the professional field, you should definitely keep your resume to 1 page. If you have more than 1 page, it basically shows that you don't know how to designate the real estate within your resume because you're definitely including things that you don't need to be including, or you have too much white space on your resume that you're wasting. For example, over here, the margins are just way too big up top. I would generally keep your resume to around 0.5 inches for your margins. So for this person specifically, the way I would move everything up is that I would move everything from above this section into 1 page, combine objectives and summary, and you will have enough page to include the rest of this. As for the below on your availability and salary, I don't know if this is common in other countries, but definitely not in the US. You wouldn't write what your availability is, your salary, and your working hours. That's something that you fill out during your application, not on your resume, or that's something that you would tell them during the interview process or in your email itself. So I would delete this portion right here. Beyond that, I think that this resume is good for someone who hasn't even started college. I know prior to college, my resume was totally whack, so props to you for being so ahead of the game here. Okay, so this next resume is probably the closest to the format of my own resume. This person is someone who graduated this year, so congratulations. And will be starting in June 2021 as a full-time investment banking analyst. The format is very good. The name should be in large bold letters up top. They have their address, their phone number, and their email address in a very concise manner. So I noticed that this person has their school email address here. Now that you've graduated, I would probably make a separate professional email address. That's your first name dot your last name at gmail.com. Instead of using your school one. How they've moved their work experience up. I'm sure that during their school education, when they were applying for internships, they had their education as the first one. But after graduating, you're supposed to move it around so that your work experience is the majority of your resume. So the way that this is formatted is generally the way that you would format your experience after having been in investment banking. So this person interned in investment banking as a summer analyst last summer, and you're supposed to list out the transactions that you've been on. Reading these bullets, they're overall really good. I'll start out with an action item and contain as many numbers as they could put in. One very small thing that I might not include is that I wouldn't say that you crafted a 64-slide investor presentation. Just say that you crafted an investor presentation. I know 64 slides might sound impressive, but books honestly range from 100-something pages to 20, and it doesn't necessarily speak to the quality of the book itself. You want to focus more on the work that you were actually doing rather than the length of the presentation. For the second bullet right here, this person wrote found and researched. Rather than saying found, I would probably say something like sourced and researched, because found just isn't as strong of a word. For your last bullet, I probably wouldn't say that you did it with a full-time analyst and associate. I think it's rather obvious that that's what an intern would do. You don't need to draw more attention to it. I would just say craft an investor presentation, outlining company management, investor highlights, so on and so forth. For this first bullet right here, you wrote that you created pitch materials, but rather than just saying that, I would be a little bit more specific on what you did for these pitch materials. Did you make industry pages? Did you do a small merger model? Did you do an accretion dilution analysis? Say specifically what you did, because that's what people essentially care most about. As for your additional information, generally, people also have a line for skills. So I would suggest adding that line in and just adding in the regular things like Microsoft Suite, as well as any other skills you have, such as being able to speak a different language or knowing coding. You definitely want to have that line in here. Speaking of skills, I think this is the perfect time to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. You can explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in your own creativity. Also, you guys will love to hear this. Skillshare has no ads, so you can actually learn and stay focused without any disruptions. One class I personally really liked is called Productivity Today, Managing Attention in the Digital Age, which talks about how you can most productively use the 24 hours you have every day. It covers understanding attention, being able to minimize distractions, and prioritizing your to-do list. And beyond that, the first 1,000 subscribers to click the link in the description box below will get a free premium membership to Skillshare. It gives you unlimited access to all of their classes, so make sure to sign up today. As for your interests, I really like them. I think that they're unique, especially the culinary YouTube and German cars, which honestly appeal to a lot of other people in finance as well, because a lot of people in finance are fans of food and nice cars, as well as professional sports. So those are all checks. Overall, this is a really well-formatted resume, particularly for investment banking. Okay. Next, resume. So first things I'm noticing on this resume is their about me and their education section. So for your education section, to the extent you can, I would include a few more bullets, such as any scores that you received during your education, or any volunteer events or awards that you had. One of the first things that people look for when they look at your education is generally your GPA or any test scores you have, and I see that this person doesn't have any currently. In addition to that, in the About Me section, I'm honestly usually not a huge fan of the About Me section. I think that you should let your resume speak for yourself, and I find them rather ambiguous. I think it can also be a little bit hard to quantify exactly what oceans of ambiguity and complexity mean. Now for the job experience. I think the overall format of the experience is good. This person has about 3 bullets per experience, which looks good visually to the eye. However, I would definitely try to bulk up each of these bullets. For example, this person wrote that they led 2 executive branding projects. However, I would delve into what exactly you did. In addition to that, rather than just saying KPI, LinkedIn traction yielding double digits growth, try to include as many numbers and specifics as you can, rather than just including short, snappy bullets. In general, all of your bullets are good, but it seems like they only have half of what they should have. It has the beginning part about what you did, but you need to go into specifics to make it a much more powerful bullet and include more numbers within it. Very small thing on your volunteer experience, provided mentorship for, it looks like this line wasn't finished. So if you are submitting this resume anywhere and you see this, please finish up this bullet. Rather than calling it volunteer experience, I would probably call it more leadership experience, because that's what firms want to see. And it does seem like you had a lot of leadership experience within both of these roles. Here you said you hosted a role, and here you said you led something. So definitely change that title to leadership experience. It will have a lot more power. Lastly, rather than just including your academic interests, you ideally want to include some of your personal interests on there as well to show the interviewer a little bit more of your personality and who you are, and spice up your resume. And lastly, I noticed that you have your phone number, email address, and LinkedIn here. I would move all of that all the way up here right underneath your name. So that way they don't have to go looking across the resume trying to find your personal information. It's right on top and they can email you whenever they want. And last resume for today's video. So the first thing that I am noticing here is that this person included a picture of themselves. Please do not include pictures of yourself on a resume. It just results in a lot of unconscious biases. And unless you are a big TV personality, you do not want to include your face on your resume by any means. So as for your profile, I would either write it as a paragraph explaining who you are as a person, or just delete it overall. These bullets read to me as things that are more vague, such as ambitious, hardworking, curious-minded, analytical. These are things that can basically be said about anyone, and they are just way too general. I've also noticed that this person has included 2 pages for the resume, which is way more than necessary. It's definitely possible to make this 1 page, and in addition to that, it can be a little bit difficult to read because they have their work experience here, which continues later on this page here. So the way that I would cut this down is that I would get rid of this profile right here. I would move your contact details up, make it so that these bullets aren't so widely spaced, and then move your skills down here to below your hobbies. Also, rather than naming it hobbies, I would call it interests instead. And after that, I would then move your education up, and I would try to utilize a lot of this white space over here. I would also get rid of your referral section. That's generally something that they'll ask you once you get an offer or during the interview process. In addition to that, for your experiences, I wouldn't include any of them in a paragraph format. That's just really difficult to read. Make sure that they are all in bullet point format, similar to how you have it here. If you find that you still don't have room, one good way to get rid of things is think about, 1, is it applicable to the jobs that I'm applying for? If this experience isn't, take it off your resume. And 2, if this experience was from way too long ago, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, take that off your resume as well, unless you think it's particularly relevant to this interview process. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you guys enjoy this series on resume reviews. If you'd like to still send in your resume, you can feel free to send it to my email at angela.sun@gmail.com. It'll be right here. I will be prioritizing the resumes that I've already received and continuing on the series of resume reviews, so stay tuned for that. And if you want more personal one-on-one advice and recommendations from me, make sure to hop on over to my Patreon account at patreon.com/angelasunx3. I have a Discord on there where I reply pretty actively, and I also offer resume reviews, one-on-one chats on my Patreon as well, so go and check it out. As always, thank you guys so much for watching my video. Please remember to smash that like button if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you so much for your support overall, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!